Powerful Content Podcast, your go-to source for content creation, strategy, and business inspiration. I'm your host, Mel Daniels, content strategist, coach, and speaker, empowering women across the globe to grow their business with powerful content that connects, nurtures, and converts. So if you're ready to create standout content that gets you noticed and remembered, or build an aligned audience who love you and are ready to buy from you, you're in the right place. I believe that content has the power to connect us all. It's up to you how you use it. Listen in for genuine and insightful chats with guests, as well as practical tools and strategies from me. It's so lovely to have you here. Let's dive into the show. I acknowledge the Wongal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of the country that I am recording from today. I recognise their continuing connection to the land and waters. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nation people listening today. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to episode 115 of the Powerful Content Podcast. Today, we're talking with Emma Heuston about using competitions in your business and what legal requirements you might need to be aware of. Now, Emma is a lawyer who happens to be no longer practicing, and I'm sure we'll get to that story shortly. She's also an author and entrepreneur. She totally understands that awful feeling as you worry you'll never get another client again, or that you made that wrong move leaving your secure, boring job to go out on your own. She also knows what it's like to feel small when people dismiss your work from home business or fledgling e-commerce business as just a hobby. You know your business is important, and so does she. Her mission is to make your business shine with easy to access tools and accessible information. Away from the office, Emma is mum to Oscar, who is a human child, Barnaby, a naughty dachshund, Polly, a small dachshund with short legs and a big attitude, and Violet, the rescue cat. She enjoys spending time with her husband, Ed, and son at the beach and making earrings. In fact, she is so obsessed with earrings. You can also check out her earrings and homeware shop, Cute Stuff by Law. Welcome to the podcast, Emma.
Hi, lovely to be here. Long time follower, first time guest.
Yeah, no, we have been connected for some time, and then most recently we've come back into connection through Mums & Co community, which is absolutely beautiful. So it's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Now, Emma, I see you as this wise businesswoman because you have been in business for quite some time now and have had kind of a varying versions of businesses as well. But I really love for you to share a little bit about your journey to becoming that non-practicing lawyer with an obsession for earrings.
Yeah, and an athletics mum now too, as my son gets into that. So keeping us busy. But I was admitted as a lawyer 23 years ago. And for 18 years, I worked at various levels of seniority for other people. And the last sort of 4 years of that was remotely work from home before COVID, before all of this stuff became possible. And I'd sort of seen myself stepping away from the traditional lawyer to changing the areas I was doing. So I've worked across a lot of different areas over the years, which is a benefit now in terms of my knowledge, but also, working from home and then working part-time, and it still wasn't enough for flexibility. And I actually found when my son ended the long daycare hours and went to school, I was just like, no, I just got to do it. I think I had more brain space because he was getting older, but school hours also meant it was just worse than daycare hours. And that flexibility of just being aligned with my values as well was really important. And for me, those values are helping women just start and be able to run their businesses with the resources and tools that they need to do it. Because I think there is a real access issue in our society in terms of being regional rather than city-based, but also in terms of size of business and this obsession with revenue rather than looking at profit and work-life balance. So that's where I've got to with that.
Amazing story. And I love how you not only went out on your own in terms of your business for the flexibility, because I know so many other women do that, to find very quickly that sometimes it's not that flexible and we work ourselves to the bone and end up in burnout. But that values alignment piece, I think, is a really big one as well. When we are aligned with what we want in life and who we want to be in life, then what we do becomes so much easier. So I love how you've done that.
Yeah, and this business, it's been going for 4.5 years now, and it was going to start as a template business, but it started more around a remote work focus, because this, again, I started in 2019. I'd had a book called The Tracksuit Economy about working from home effectively.
Yes.
And that then became, and then all of a sudden people were asking me for legal services. So I thought, okay, well, it's a bit of a hybrid business. And then COVID hit. And for 2 years, I didn't really put my head up. And then we developed a real niche in online courses, and everyone was working from home. But when I looked around anyway, all our clients were online business women. And that was really where my heart lay. So we sort of moved to there. And then my original idea 4.5 years ago had been templates only, no practice, templates only, and legal information. And that has sort of come full circle, because in July last year, that's what we did. I downsized our lawyer. She's gone to a great new role, and it's just templates and me sharing legal information through content, and mainly online content, which I'm always looking at your stuff because it's so connected to that.
Yeah. And I found it really interesting as well that you mentioned there that you came full circle with your business. And I think that often we do that as well. Like, just because we start one way doesn't mean that we have to continue that way. We change, our life circumstances change, our ideal client changes, our interests change, all of these things can change. So I just think that that's a really great story as well for people who are listening, who feel like they might be stuck doing the same thing, that there is that possibility to change if you need to. So thank you so much for sharing that. But today we are talking all about competitions, Emma.
Yes.
And this is a really great topic for us to talk about, I think, because competitions can be fun. They can be strategic as well, part of our business growth. We can do it by ourselves or we can do it collaboratively, but I have a feeling that most people are oblivious to the legal side of competitions, because there is a legal side. So let's just maybe start with a simple question. So let's maybe just start with this question, Emma. Why might a business run a competition?
So it's actually really great PR or promotion or awareness. And you do have to be careful that there are rules on certain platforms about, tagging people and sharing your account, liking and sharing, whether that's allowed. So you may get stopped by a platform. And that's not necessarily on the legal side, but it is the terms that those platforms use. But they're really strategic, and they're also really good for business. So they're good for awareness. It may be, if you've got a product, you can give away a few free products, especially if you're a new business, and people go, wow, this is great, and tell their friends. So it's really great for word of mouth marketing, and it's organic. So it's not paid ads and that kind of thing. You'd have the cost of the prize, but it's often cheaper than, say, running big paid ad campaigns. And it may get you, as organic content, it may get you that bit more traction as well, more eyes on your account, more followers, or
So it sounds like
that
there's
sort of thing.
it sounds like there's so many different benefits to actually running a competition. But I just want to pick up on something that you've said there, Emma. It sounds as though there is maybe just not just the type of competition that we're running, but also the consideration of where we're running it as well, in terms of the platform and what requirements they have. Maybe we can go into some of the specifics around the platforms later in the episode, but what are the main types of competitions? We've decided that we want to run a competition. What's next?
So there's two main types, and I think this is the really important thing to go back to when you first think competition, great. And it's not just whacking it up on Facebook, like our account and tag a friend and go in the running to win such and such. You've got to think, is it a game of chance, which is where everyone who enters has the same chance of winning? So that could be liking an account and tagging someone. It could be lottery, it could be winning a free book, and you can do that. Or a game of skill, which is skill of some type. And you'll often see, in 25 words or less, tell us why your mum should get a facial, or whatever, or a video entry or that kind of thing. And you kind of think, oh, who goes through it? Do people go through these things? Which is what I always think. And does it really matter what you write? Or could you write anything and they do pick them randomly? And the reason for that is that games of chance actually have far more regulation than games of skill, because we're in Australia, so we have all the different states and territories, and they each have different laws. And some states are quite strict, some are not so strict. And then there's a general thing that you can't be misleading or deceptive about your conduct. And we have the Australian consumer law about that. And that means that you can't promise something. So say you were giving away a book and you never had a book and no one ever got the prize, or that someone would get a free appointment for a facial, but then nobody did. You can't be misleading and deceptive. And that applies for both types. But the game of chance is sometimes, some states you need permits. There might be application fees. You've got other competition terms about cost of entry. For example, in Northern Territory, it's got to comply with the Gaming Control Act. There's all these different things. So that's why you often do see that 25 words or less and that game of skill. And I think that if you're running a competition, you're probably better to go on that side of things to stay on the right side of the law.
Wow. Okay. So there was so much there to unpack, Emma. I'm just going to ask a few clarifying questions if I can. So the game of skill, or we have a choice between a game of skill or a game of chance. The game of chance is kind of like we put all the names in a hat and we pull one out. Whereas the game of skill is more about writing something or recording something in order to win. With that game of skill, I'm really interested to know, does it then become a game of chance? So the person randomly picks someone, or do they pick someone based on the actual entry?
That's the thing we'll never know, because no one really lifts the veil and says, well, we just got 100 entries, but we're not going to read the 100 entries or watch them. Often they will read or watch them, because if it's a video entry, they might then use the video in their own promotions. So often they will. I know I ran a game of skill competition once and I did read the entries and decide. But and I guess that's one thing we'll never know. They should be reading them and checking, but who knows what happens? And I suppose if it's, to give away a couple of books or a free haircut, then probably no one's going to come in and check. But if it was Qantas giving away 1,000 free flights, then, the ACCC might come in and check that, because they're a big company. So
yeah, no, that's really interesting. And with the game of chance, so this is everyone has an equal opportunity of actually winning. We see a lot of those, I think, probably on Facebook and Instagram more than a game of skill. It's often a game of chance, because it's around liking, like you said, tagging or commenting below, something like that gets them an entry or additional entries into a competition or a lottery of some description. So with these types of competitions, the game of chance, is there anything specific that we need to understand in terms of our legal requirements or obligations?
Yeah, so you must, generally speaking, it does differ across all states, but as a general rule of thumb, these rules apply across the whole of Australia, and that is entry must either be free or if it's part of the sale of a product, not cost more than the value of the product. So if you say, well, if you buy this shampoo and conditioner pack, that's $30 and you get a free entry into our drawer. You can't say, oh, well, that's $35 with the free entry. It has to be just what you'd sell the product for, but like a bonus. And the competition must also be for the benefit of promoting the business or a product. So it can't be sort of unrelated or for another business, for example. And the winner has to be determined by chance. So be there. And there should be terms and conditions. So details of how to enter, the prize details, the value of the prizes, start and closing dates, and how the winners are drawn and notified and when they will be. That's so people could say, look at the terms and say, well, they were meant to draw that on the 30th of March and it's now the 1st of April. They could go and they should be able to go and check. And then the winner, it's a good idea for a business to actually pop something on socials, or that the winners were drawn and that sort of thing as well.
Okay, so before we go into a discussion around terms and conditions, Emma, I'd really love to know about the platforms or the places where we decide to run our competitions. Sometimes as we're scrolling on socials, we may see a disclaimer on some posts or some people's posts who are giving something away. Do we need to have that? And what is that about?
So a disclaimer, it's always a good idea to have it, say, on your landing page or in your post, but it's usually also part of a term. You might have an entry on a Google form with a hyperlink to terms and conditions back to your site, and your disclaimer would always be in there, but you can pull a tiny bit out and say, a key sort of summarizing paragraph that it is a game of chance and it'll be drawn on this, and for winner, we can't contact a winner, we're going to draw a second or something like that. It's always a good idea to be clear. And I think to have that on the landing page and make it clear that, it's subject to these terms and conditions. Because if you're giving away a push bike, someone might say, well, it needs to be it should be the model specified and the value, because is it a secondhand push bike? Is it, a $20,000 racing bike? Yeah, so it's always really important to be clear on what the value is and how and when it's drawn, because you can't give away something you don't really intend to do, or it's not a real competition. And I have heard of a coach who coaches photographers, and one of the tactics they use is by telling their coaching clients who are photographers starting up businesses, just run a competition and say you've had demand and extend the competition. And the trick with photography, and you often see it as a consumer, is you get a free half an hour photo shoot, but then they try and upsell and extend the photo shoot, or you don't get free photos with that, you just get the shoot. So that to me isn't a real competition. I don't think there's value there, because they're not really you can just go and get your photos taken, but what use is that without the actual photos, which they charge for?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing, Emma, is to be clear, to have extreme clarity about what you're actually giving away and all of the information around that, as well as to give more information than you think is absolutely necessary. So if you think a level of information is required, go deeper into that and really specify exactly what you're giving away and the price and any other conditions that are attached to it.
And make sure it's of value, because winning something that you then have to pay for extra, to me, that's not really a prize.
No, it's not at all, is it?
No.
So with these terms and conditions that we're talking about for our competition, where should they actually be housed? Because I'm thinking to myself, if I run a competition and I promote it on Instagram, to have a whole bank of terms and conditions text in my post seems a little bit crazy. So where should those terms and conditions live?
So say you were doing it on Instagram. I think the short answer is they should live on your website, on a page at the back of your website. And you can copy and paste them there. And then they should be linked to a landing page on your website where people put the entries in. But say you were on Instagram, then you'd say enter via the link in the bio. And the link in the bio should then take you to that competition page. And the landing page would then have a link with ideally a checkbox saying, in entering this competition, I agree to the terms and conditions. If you don't have a checkbox facility on your webpage, at least make it really clear that they're agreeing to that when they enter. Also make it really clear, it's a good idea there to have a link to your privacy policy, because I'm sure a lot of the idea of these competitions is it's a lead magnet and you're collecting data, you're collecting people's emails and contact, and that you probably want them on your mailing list to send newsletters to or promotions to. So I think that needs to be really clear, and think about whether that's going to be an opt-in tick, and you do see that sometimes, click if you want to be opted in, or whether that's just going to be part of the competition. But if it is, you should also have a privacy policy on your website, a link to that, as well as a link to the competition terms.
Yeah, wow. So it sounds to me as though we really do need to sit and think about competitions before we just dive in and go, yes, I'm going to give something away. There's all these other bits and pieces that need to be in place before we do that.
Absolutely. And think about the purpose. Is it to get more followers on social media? Or is it to collect email addresses so your email list grows? Or is it both? And depending on what the purpose is, then you need to go, well, okay, well, we don't want them to think we're spamming them. We want them to know they're going to end up on our mailing list. And you might say, oh, I never signed up for that, but they entered the competition, and that's why you're doing it, or part of the reason why. But you need to make it really clear, because I think that honesty and transparency is really important.
Yeah, because like you said, once again, you don't want someone entering your competition and then feel bad about entering the competition because you're spamming them with all of these emails as a follow-up to the competition. So really think about that human. I was going to ask you around the privacy side of things, and I think that you've answered that in terms of having that privacy policy, making sure that you've got it in place and making sure that you are very clear, very specific in terms of if you are going to add them to a mailing list. And what about from another privacy angle, Emma, in terms of collecting people's data?
So the privacy, and once you have a privacy policy for your business, and that again sits on another back end of your website, but should be hyperlinked in the footer, that covers every aspect of your business. And that should say how you collect people's information and the reason you might use it. And could be reasons to let you know about offers, to send you updates. And you've just got to be careful though. You've got to think, what do you need? So I think a really good example is and the recent breach, because I'm a former Optus customer, but I haven't been an Optus customer for about 8 years. My husband's a current Optus customer, and he would get the email updates a day before me when the breach happened. And then I got a notice saying, oh, it's been breached. And Optus still had my details, the address, we've moved since then, but they had phone numbers, they had they say collect a license to give you, your phone contract. They would have had my license from a long time ago, but they still have it. And 8 years I haven't been a customer. And you think, fair enough, they do need it to establish identification and do credit checks, but should they keep that? So if you're asking people for really sensitive information, such as dates of birth, addresses, anything beyond, say, email and phone number, which might be discoverable anyway, you've got to say, well, hang on, do I need to know those things? And should we keep that? So in the end, you might keep their email address on your mailing list, but not keep the other details you've collected for a competition. Because to keep them could mean that they're breached and you're left exposed because someone's got their details, when really all you wanted was probably their email to put them on your mailing list.
So what I'm hearing here is think about the data that you're going to collect and then make sure that you have those necessary processes in place to think about what you're going to keep and what you're not going to keep, to make sure that you safeguard yourself as well as the person entering the competition too.
And a good privacy policy should have, as someone can request that their data be deleted, or you might anonymize data. So you might be collecting data through your competition, how many, you might be doing a poll, which product do you like, which one would you choose, which is fine, but then you just got to anonymize that, not keep maybe names associated with it.
All good advice. I love it so much. Emma, is there any tools that we can use to help us stay compliant or still help us stay on top of those legal requirements, especially when it comes to competitions? You've mentioned a few things already, like privacy policies. What can help us in this respect?
So I think what you need to think about every time you've got a competition, and our blog, which you're going to share in the comments, is actually a really good starting point, because it's got links to our template for terms and conditions. But I think every time you start a competition, you need to think, what's the purpose, which platform, how do I need to protect myself? And that could be, and once you've got a template, you run 3 competitions, you only need 1 template, because you can change the competition details. So it's not every time you run it, you need all these things. It's getting yourself prepared, getting yourself, like we like to say, ready to boss. And then you can look at that blog and go, is it a game of chance? Is it a game of skill? And if it's a game of skill, the blog's actually got in purple, it's got a really handy table going through each state and territory in Australia, talking about, do you need a permit and things to be aware of. And then it'll just be that reminder, game of skill, game of chance, for you to then look at that. And then at the end, we've got the things that definitely need to be in your competition terms and conditions.
Perfect. Love it. And yes, I will definitely link that blog. It is so informative and it is so easily accessible, such easily accessible information for anyone who's thinking of running a competition. So that is in the show notes if you want to go and read that. And like Emma said, there's an amazing table there. You can determine which state and whether you need permits or not. Is a really valuable source of information. Now, Emma, I picked up 3 Ps when you were just talking then about what you need to do to make sure that you are following all the legal requirements. And that is to understand the purpose, know your platform, and then have that protection in place. So if anyone wants to walk away with 3 Ps, there you go.
Actually, we could end 4, then prize.
There you go. The 4 Ps.
Yeah.
Purpose, platform, protection, and prize. Fantastic. Thank you so much for all of that information, Emma. I know that is going to be extremely helpful for anyone who is thinking about running a competition. Now, before we finish up today, though, Emma, I am all about women owning and using their superpowers. So what would you say is your superpower?
Mine is actually digital products and being able to see the value in intellectual property. So mine and mine are pretty obvious in my digital products, but I also do some digital product consulting. So people turning all that knowledge they have and all the things they deliver one-on-one into products that they can sell of varying values. They can sell online to create that and I'm not going to say passive, I'm going to say semi-passive income streams. It is still work creating and maintaining them, but it is a different income stream, which is really handy, particularly when you're maxed out on one-on-one work or that kind of thing. And it's a bit more accessible than, say, a course or a program.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
if anyone wants to work with you or find out more about how you can help them with digital products or get information about digital products, I will make sure that I pop all of your links in the show notes so you can go and check out Emma, go and stalk her and find out more. Before we finish up, is there any parting words of wisdom you have for my listeners?
I think to focus on your own race. So you might see someone else running a competition and think, I have to, but do you have to? Think about those 4 Ps. And also, thinking about, well, someone else is, they're hiring a big team, they're running paid ads. Do you actually need to? Maybe yours is organic content and a small team. It's not necessarily thinking small if that's what's right for you.
Beautiful parting words of wisdom. Focus on your own race. I definitely agree with that, because when we start looking outside our own sphere, we don't take into consideration our own time, energy, and resources. And when we don't do that, then we kind of hit that wall of overwhelm, and we all know that leads to burnout as well. So I love that. Focus on your own race, everyone.
And you also, you only see the highlights online too. So those people, you don't know, maybe their revenue's great, but they're not making a profit. You just don't know all of those things.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely agree. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Emma, and sharing your wisdom with my listeners. I truly appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you. It's been a great chat.
Thanks so much for listening. That's it for another week. To get more powerful content in your life, make sure you're following along on socials. My handle is @meldbusiness. And just in case you're wondering, the groovy music for this podcast was created by Just Here on SoundCloud. I'd also be super grateful if you took a moment to rate and review this podcast so more amazing women like you can experience the power of content. And if you're like, hell Mel, stop talking, I'm ready to work with you now, here's how we can work some powerful content magic together. Firstly, come and join the Content Effect, my membership inspiring women with service-based businesses to ditch the content chaos and start creating stand-out content that gets you noticed and makes sales. You can join us by using the link in the show notes, or just Google the Content Effect. The second way we can work together is via my one-on-one packages. We can create a sustainable content strategy or start to build out your client journey. It's up to you. Hop on over to meldbusinessservices.com.au/services to find out more. Until next time, have a beautiful week and embrace the power of your content.